So this week, the Epstein drama is still dominating the news cycle. Even though there's pressure from the White House to kill this story, the story is all over the media, internet, news, talking heads, and Trump is busy doing what he does best, distraction. Now, a lot of media reports what the distractions are. However, that really doesn't get to the bottom line about all of this. And if you look at Trump, what he's doing is he's trying to refocus people on other issues. Why would Biden be calling for the change of the Washington Redskins and Cleveland Indians back to the, like? Why would he? With everything happening in the world, with all the the damage he's caused with tariffs, bombing Iran, and the genocide in Gaza, the war in the Ukraine, why would he focus on the Washington Redskins and the Cleveland Indians?
Well,
And that,
it's to overload the media, and you see him producing multiple lies and stories and fiction and drama and all at one time. Anytime he has something that he's trying to cover, he makes sure there's a flood on the market in media so that it just drowns out any noise to the contrary of his story.
well, it didn't work. So he moved on to blaming the Democrats for making up the Epstein story, claiming that they wrote all the letters that were suppressed in order to harm him politically, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, that's laughable, and it
Well, I'm
didn't work.
surprised he didn't blame Obama for the doodle in his signature saying he forged his signature. You know.
Well, that would have been Biden with the automatic
Okay,
the
but yeah,
automatic signing machine. But
yeah,
he,
that's
but
right.
he, when that didn't work, he recently released 240,000 plus pages of a court sealed file on the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassination. So he's now dumped a ton of historical paper on the media in order to try to move it away from the Epstein file. That didn't work. So now he's blaming former President Obama for committing treason against him. And
Did you
and
see
that
that video, the AI the video to try to make his point? How many people would be that gullible not to know that it's fake?
well, and the thing is, apparently his followers are. But what the real issue is, yes, he's a master manipulator. He loves drama, but is he a
Oh yeah.
psychopath? And is this where all of this gets generated in the deep, hidden, dark regions of a psychopath's mind?
Is
And
he a
if
sociopath as well?
and a
Is my
narcissist, and
question. And well,
well,
he's a whole
and
bunch of things that
yes,
are
and
not normal.
but anybody can go on the internet and put in that question. Is Trump a psychopath? And you'll come up with pages and pages of professional and non-professional opinions. And so I think what would be useful is for our readers to think about what is a psychopath? What are the 7 clinical tools, the
Well, let's
psychometric
go through
tools?
these 7 to help our audience,
Does
and we'd
does
like comments from the audience on each one or examples of each one in the comments so
does
we
does
can deal with it.
does Trump ignore right and wrong?
Well, I don't even know if he knows what's right or wrong. I'm sure he does because he's been very evasive of the laws. He's a very litigious person that gets around the law and the legal system by having money to buy the proper legal defenses and buy off witnesses and silence, uh, people that are making claims against him. I mean, look at what's happening right now with the Maxwell. He's sending his fixer lawyer from his previous legal actions, who is now a member of his team in the White House, along with Bondi, to go intimidate and harass Maxwell to get online. And I'm sure there's lots of threats and intimidation. I mean, she's got to be fearing for her life, period. And that's the form of intimidation planned and orchestrated by a sociopath and a psychopath.
You asked the question, does he even know the difference between right and wrong? And I think what you have to look at is when he's wrong, does he always profit from being wrong? Because if
Oh,
he never loses from being wrong, then you know he knows the difference because he's all about profit. So I would
that's
suggest
right.
to
I
you,
agree with you on that. He
I
does
would
know the difference.
I would suggest he knows how to pad his pocket with everything from cryptocurrency to lousy watches and you name it, right? The
Yeah.
guy's a carny. He knows the
Oh,
difference between right and wrong. But
yes.
the other thing is too, he's also a convicted felon. So quite definitely, he knows when other people consider him wrong. And
Oh, yeah.
that takes us to one of the other questions. Uh, does he tell lies and take advantage of others?
Well, that's
Dozens of
absolute truth to
bankruptcies,
that.
failed businesses, selling next to worthless watches for money, selling phantom cards with his picture of a Superman on it.
How many people in his career has he ripped off or, you know, caused to lose money? That's one question I would like.
Well, the thing is, there's no doubt. I think everybody can agree that Trump tells lies and takes advantage of others.
Yes.
So that there's a check mark beside that one. So far we've got ignoring right and wrong, telling lies to take advantage of others, and we're on to not being sensitive to or respectful of others.
Yes. But,
Oh yeah, he calls people's names. He brags about grabbing pussies. He grabs people off the street and sends them to third countries to live in dungeons. He
oh,
bombs
for
innocent
sure.
unarmed people. He definitely has no respect for other people. So we
I
got a check
agree.
mark there. Now, does he use charm or wit to manipulate others for personal gain or pleasure?
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's his
That's a
association
given.
with Epstein. You know, he's probably up to his neck in molesting underage girls, and that's why he's trying to suppress the information, the data that he doesn't want to come out. Like, why would a guy like him promote beauty pageants? Why would he brag about walking into the teenage girls' dressing rooms?
You know, that
Like,
that that in itself should have raised ire amongst religious people in the U.S. is that this is not normal social behavior of any male adult that respects females or children. And him referring to them as women, young women, that shows you right there. These are children. They're not women. So, that should have been a warning sign in and of its own.
you know, there you can't fix stupid, and unfortunately, a lot of his, like I don't like to use the word stupid. You could use the word lack of intelligence, failure in cognitive abilities, perhaps
He's not
intellectually
stupid.
intellectual. No, I'm talking about his followers,
Oh,
intellectually
yeah.
challenged. You're talking about why would
Lack of
people vote?
critical, I point it out as lack of critical thinking. I mean, if you can't critically think and connect the line between dots, you should be probably taking some courses, maybe about a grade 5 level course to start education process all over again.
Well, that's why they've got rid of the Department of Education.
Yeah.
The last thing you want is somebody to look at a problem and say, well, 2 and 2 equals 4. It doesn't equal what Trump said. And and
Yeah.
and so you need followers. You don't need educated critical thinkers. But so there's no doubt. He does have a certain amount of charm, obviously,
Wasn't
because
one of his quotes, "I love the uneducated"?
yeah, well, he's charmed a substantial population of the American people for personal gain and pleasure, right? He's making a fortune off these pigeons. But
Oh,
anyways, on to the next one. We're moving down the list.
okay.
We got a plus.
Sure.
We got a plus mark there.
Okay.
Does he have a sense of superiority and being extremely opinionated?
No, he's got no opinion.
There's way too many examples of that, right? Like
Yeah,
there's no way you can't check off that box. Uh, look what he says about immigrants. They're
right.
eating the dogs, they're eating the cats. And
Yeah.
if anybody believed that crap and still voted for that
I
person, they
mean,
should have their heads examined.
what immigrant criminal would there be? I mean, everybody knows if you commit crimes, you got police looking for you. So if you're an immigrant, the last thing you're going to do is ever commit a crime to get you in the spotlight. There's an old saying, you never throw a rock from a glass house. And what are people that naive to believe that immigrants are these whole rage of criminals? Most of them are nothing like that. And that's the
Well,
majority, like 99.99%.
but
There might
but
be
Cory,
the odd rare case.
those are the
Rare
facts. Those are the facts. Trump isn't
fact.
interested in facts, right?
No,
Facts get in the way of what Trump says, and
but
and
that's critical thinking. The people that are following him should use a little bit of critical thinking.
yeah.
Would you go out and commit crimes if you were illegally in the country? Absolutely not. Under the
One of
radar.
well, the other side of what he's saying is that these immigrants take away jobs from Americans, and they get all these social benefits and handouts. So if that were the case, why would they eat cats and dogs?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, why would they
You know,
be on the menu?
no, they're already living high on the hog, according to Trump. Why would
Exactly.
why would they eat cats and dogs, right? So
Yeah.
anybody that believes that is crazy for one reason. But
Yeah.
the
But there
the other
seems to be
side.
a majority in the US believes it. So
But
what
even
does that say about the culture in the US?
but even if you believed, okay, that's not true. He was joking, right? He was joking. But is it a joke? His
No, it's
his
not.
goal is to cause fear and hatred against an identifiable group. That's no joke. So even
And
if you think he's joking, it's not funny.
aren't there laws against targeting people with hate
Well, he's
as
already proven he
motivating
can.
crime?
His Supreme Court of Canada, sorry, his
Supreme Court of the
Supreme Court of
U.S.
the
Well,
U.S. has told him he can do whatever the hell he wants while he's in power because it's part of his presidential duty. So he's not going to worry about,
no.
being, charged with, hate crimes. That the last thing he's worried about.
Yeah,
But anyway, so
should the UN step in then at that point? At least make a case that the U.S. has a
sure,
hate crime
yeah, sure,
president. I
that'll
mean,
work. Okay, so let's look at where we are in this list. He ignores right and wrong. He tells lies to take advantage of others. He's not being sensitive or respectful to others. He uses his wit, charm to manipulate others for personal gain and pleasure.
correct.
He has a sense of superiority and is extremely opinionated. So that brings us to the number 7 on this list. So he's got 6 out of 7 so far. Does he have problems with the law, including criminal behavior?
Well, I don't see any of his actions right from day one. First time I ever heard of this guy, I said it was a fraud back when he was doing the 3 casinos in Vegas. I said, that's just a scam. Everybody's going to lose their asses. This guy is a silver or gold spoon, I guess, kid with a big trust fund that has a history of ripping people off, and this is nothing but a ripoff. And he's got some pretty powerful ties to crime organizations. If he's operating 3 casinos in Vegas, he has.
No, it was Atlantic City. It was Atlantic City. They went bankrupt.
Oh, okay. Well,
And he bankrupted them. He couldn't even run a casino,
How
because
do you
he
do
was
that?
he was stealing all the money. Like he had some scam where he got his father volunteered to buy a whole whack of chips and made it look profitable, sold a bunch of shares, and then went bankrupt. The honesty type
I
thing.
never
But
followed it too much. I just wrote them off.
it's in the
That
past.
far back then, yeah.
It's crazy stuff. But so the other question that you raised. Is it criminal behavior when the president of the United States does it? And the
Well,
Supreme Court of the United States has said the president can do whatever he wants and it's not criminal behavior.
well, I think they said so long as it's not part of his duty. But what is his duty as president, right? Is his duty to uh, promote hate crimes? Is his duty to commit crimes? That, I think, falls outside the president's role. So he is walking a tightrope. And I think the people of the U.S. can and see the difference between criminal acts that are not part of the presidency and personal acts of vengeance, personal acts of attacking people for personal gain. And what about, the ethical aspects of ripping people off with his cryptocurrency? Because that cryptocurrency in my book is nothing but a criminal scam to begin with, to legitimize black money moving across borders and converting it into cash once it's untraceably transferred to other entities. So
And Cory, you're right back to number one. He ignores right and wrong.
yes.
Yeah,
So I mean, there's no doubt he meets every criteria, and every psychologist and psychiatrist, and there's been all sorts of them do analysis of him, and they all come up with the same thing. He is a psychopath and a sociopath in many regards.
and a narcissist. But
And
moving on from that,
okay.
do you think he recognizes the fact that he's a psychopath? In other words, is he one of these people that knows he's not
Oh
really
yeah.
a psychopath, but he has psychopathic behavior and recognizes what it is,
Oh,
and that
he's not dumb. He's not dumb. He knows exactly what he's doing, and he gets lots of counsel. I mean, there was a lawyer in the 70s and 80s that counseled him on how to do uh, manipulation of the law and how to make sure that you never get held accountable in the court system. And that, was a fact of life back when.
now if we bring up the self-awareness, remember he was mentioning Hannibal Lecter. He was calling them about how Hannibal Lecter, the fictional character from Silence of the Lambs, if he invites you to dinner, he's going to eat you. Trump acknowledges that Hannibal Lecter, the person who plays that part, is acting as a serious psychopath, and he brings up all of that psychopathic behavior, and then in his rallies while he's talking about that brings in the immigrant issue, where he's trying to tie the immigrants to being psychopathic killers and psychopaths, but not himself. But he
Yeah.
recognizes the condition. So you have to wonder, is Trump a psychopath, or does he just act like one because he gets away with it?
Well, I mean, I I know he has sexual deviant behaviors. I know he knows what he's doing to get away with the laws. He knows what the laws are. He's more than willing to pay and bribe witnesses. He's more than willing to make sure that if you do lay any claims against him, he's going to bury you in legal costs that would choke most average people out of any ability to seek justice before the courts. And he's not beyond buying FBI agents and people to work within the agencies by paying bribes, because that's his ability with the deep pockets he has. When the FBI are asked to investigate and nothing happens, it's either corruption or bribe, because they're mandated to do their job. And when you see consistently that nobody wants to do their job when it comes with Trump, people must be on his payroll. And we're seeing evidence that the payroll is important to a lot of the people surrounding him. He's got a whole bunch of lackeys doing his bidding, and there has to be benefit for lackeys to do it. So you got to have a little critical thinking when you're looking at what's really going on.
I think you have to follow through to the way in which he manipulates television and gets people to report his stupidity, and it comes out at such a rapid fire that people have no time to catch up to the prior story before the next story breaks, and one is stupider than the other, and you look at them in hindsight, and he nobody
But he
seems to
wouldn't be
catch up
able
to
to
him.
do that. He wouldn't be able to do that if there wasn't the degradation of media and journalism. I mean, the people that own these media outlets, they relish on the fact that he can provide them content to get viewership. And though they know it's not proper journalism, they go ahead and promote it because it's sensationalism, which sells and helps them get sponsors and advertising. So that has made it very lucrative for these owners of media to get on board with the Trump train. And that Trump train has made them millions and millions of dollars. And that's why they're backing it, is because when you're dumping two or three things a day and he comes up with so many lies, it's just perpetuating this Trump train on media. And I think what the US has to consider, and the world consider, is that we need to redefine what journalism is and what a lie is, and hold people accountable to lies. Sensationalism based on lies that generate profit or money is a lie that is lining the pockets of the people in control. And these are easy to deal with by passing legislation at a level to stop the perpetration of lies to the general population. The integrity of journalism has to be regained, and that is something that has to be really looked at. And it's really hard with social media happening, like us doing podcasts, uh, takes away from journalism and media. But the reason we're in existence is the lack of journalism out there to give various perspective on what's actually going down. So these are issues that make a bigger picture, and we have to come up with some rational way of dealing with it. And I think the legislators can see that. If there's ever another election in the US, they might be able to change it. But under the dictatorship program that Trump has envisioned, there never will be another election, is my guess.
I think you have to look at the current situation and how can such supposedly upright moral citizens, the politicians that were elected, stand behind this, blindly stand behind this.
I, the
It's
Senate, the
almost impossible to believe.
representatives in the House, like how on earth can you look yourself in the mirror and say you're upholding the values of the Constitution of the US, or you are there to represent the people that elected you? I I'm the only thing I can see is, have they got a way of manipulating the ballot counts that we're not aware of, and they're not afraid of the ballot counts anymore because it worked? Because there's no rational thought that if you didn't
No,
have
they're
control of the
well,
ballots that you'd ever get reelected in
well, they're
any
afraid of,
riding.
yeah, they're afraid of their jobs. They have a nice cushy job in Washington with a nice big office, and they've got all these people that bow down to them and do what they say, and they don't want to lose that job. And the morality of supporting a psychopath doesn't bother them. Doesn't bother them at all. And the thing is, one of the examples that goes back a month, maybe 6 weeks, that highlights all of those is the way he handled Zelensky in the meeting with the media. Now, here's a guy that comes all the way over from the Ukraine, begging for munitions, for arms. He thinks he's going to a state dinner. He sits down, in front of a fireplace with Trump and a bunch of his advisors, including the Vice President Dickwad, and what do? They lay into him, they insult him, and then Trump
Oh,
acknowledges after all of that he did it because it was great television. And the poor bastard who came to dinner ends up storming out of the White House without dinner and going home in an embarrassing situation that he now has to kiss ass and give away all the resources of the Ukraine
Oh,
in order to make things better again. Like that was planned, and it I would suggest it fits all the behavior of a psychopath. But
well, I
it
don't think so. Like I think it had to do more. There's a deal between him and Putin, and you can see that Putin and him have dealings at some level because Trump keeps doing favors for Putin.
it doesn't
That
matter what the deal was.
yeah,
What matters is what the behavior is. So
right.
he's ignoring right and wrong. He's telling lies to take advantage of others. He's not being sensitive or respectful. He used his charm and wit to get Zelensky to come into the trap and be sandbagged. He has a sense of superiority. That's how he handled that interview.
Yeah.
And he's having problems with the law, including criminal behavior, because what he's doing is he's going against what the prior administration had already approved. Didn't care. So that's one example of how a psychopath behaves. The 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 deal behind the action may explain the action, but the action is the action of a psychopath. And so Trump, I would submit, is a psychopath, but he's a clever one because everything he tries to pull off is to his benefit, which I guess is part of the definition of a psychopath.
Yeah.
They never want to lose. They never want to admit that they're wrong. They never want to take advice from somebody else.
Well,
And they just
using
want.
the standard psychometric tool, Dr. Kevin Dutton of Oxford University ranked both presidential candidates in a series of historical world figures. So this is back when Hillary Clinton was run against Trump. And Trump scored 171, achieving 2 more points than Adolf Hitler. And Saddam Hussein ranked 189 points above, which was the highest on the list. Hillary Clinton did receive a score of 152, placing her in the top 20% according to this test. So I don't know the validity of the test and the doctor doing it, but it does clearly show that Trump surpassed the test results to Adolf Hitler. And that should be scaring people.
Yeah, others have called him a malignant narcissist, saying that he has the calculating drives of a psychopath, the craving for praise and approval of a sociopath, and the preening self-regard to others as a narcissist. So,
Yeah.
so I mean, he falls within a lot of those behaviors, and I think one of the issues that we're going to have is we're going to have that son of a bitch for another 3.5 years,
Yeah.
and the thing is, how does the world navigate around that?
I
Like
don't know.
when do the good people in the U.S. stand up and say what he's doing is wrong? Like
I don't know
we've seen
that.
we saw demonstrations in the street, and they sent in the Marines
Yeah,
and
that's
they and
bad.
the National Guards over the objections of the state of California. Like he's I
Well,
don't know how they're ever going
here's
to get.
a jeunesse pain, August 1st, 2016. Spot the difference, psychopath or sociopath, the Donald Trump example. And it was updated December 30th, 2024, and it shows a picture of Eric Cartman. He's a psychopath. So the cartoon character Eric Cartman is a psychopath. Ted Bundy is a psychopath, of course he is. Joffrey Baratheon, in the show King of Thrones, I believe, is a sociopath. Adolf Hitler is a sociopath. And of course, the reference that Trump loves is Hannibal Lecter, who is a psychopath. So under the terms of that, and we've already established that Trump is also a psychopath, that leads us to understand why he admires and reveres a fictional character called Hannibal Lecter, because he sees himself in that. And I think he's looking in the mirror saying, I love that guy, why don't you love me? That's my take on it. Now, I could be
or
wrong.
or he sees the power and fear and
Yeah.
dominance, and he thinks that he needs to be both dominant and feared. And if
Weak,
people don't,
weak men and weak people have to exert dominance over others, and that's why Trump likes to dominate girls, and he likes to dominate women, and he figures that that shows how powerful he is because he can grab anybody by the pussy, and his money will always protect him, and his contacts and his ability to buy off legal systems prevent him from being perceived as the pervert he should be classed as. And that is a sign of a weak individual. And it is not locker talk to talk about grabbing women by the pussy. I've been in a lot of sports in my life, and I've never, ever, even as a teenager, we never talked like that in a locker room. So that's bullshit coming from the media, even supporting that that's locker talk. If a person in a locker room playing baseball or whatever come up to me and started talking, I grabbed that gal by the pussy, I'd knock his frickin' teeth out. He's a pervert. And most men are like that. We don't want to hear that. So that the fact that they're claiming it's locker talk, no. Real men do not talk like that. Get that in your head. And why religious people would even allow that brings another issue to the table about ideologies of religious people that think women are property, maybe. I have no idea. But to talk like that in front of real men, you should have your teeth knocked right out. I'm not a violent person, but, you know, perverts are perverts, and no real man would associate with a pervert with pervert tendencies. So birds of a feather flock together. Why does he become friends with a bunch of pedophiles and associate with people that have been convicted for pedophilia? And then he'd go, I don't know these people. Well, yeah, you know them. You hung with them. Because you couldn't hang with people that are real men. You couldn't hang with a real man, dude. You're a pervert. And I'll say it to your face. You're not welcome in my house. I wouldn't let you near any daughter of mine. You wouldn't come within 100 yards of her because you are a pervert. Saying on public record that, oh, that girl in 2 years will be, you know, I'll be dating her in 2 years and she's 14, so you put her at 16, you got some screws loose, buddy. And any U.S. citizens backing that, they have screws loose. So my warning is the majority of the U.S. are screws loose, and we shouldn't be dealing with the U.S. at all. They've shown their true color as a religious fanatic country that is not topped by any other country in the world that I know of. I place it number one for fanatics and zealots and whatever you want to call. So I don't know.
I think from knowing, born again Christian supporters of Trump, I think the motivation was to set aside a woman's right to control their body. That was their only real issue. They didn't care who changed that, who brought the news. They didn't care what kind of baggage came with that.
Women
That
turning on women. I mean, that's what's going on in the United States. Women turning on women and trying to turn the clock back 1,000 years. I have no words for it, but I guess it shows that this is the influence that religion has on society, and there used to be separation between church and state. Now the U.S. is basically identified that they are run by religious organizations that have influence on votes. And
well,
that's
it's
scary. That's scary because most
it's
wars
also
in the world are caused by religion. Nothing
it's
else.
the misinterpretation of what people call scripture, and it doesn't matter whose scripture it is. It's a misinterpretation for power, personal power. That is the issue. I think. Like if you look at what the scripture says and what the born again Christians claim it says, it's a mismatch of ideals. In other words, there's really only 10 commandments in the Christian Bible.
Yeah.
It's got nothing to do with suppressing women, or hating immigrants, or eating dogs and cats. Like
But a
it's
true
some.
psychopath like Trump would know that the basis of religion is psychopathic tendencies, I think, and definitely sociopathic tendencies. So he knows how to exploit that, and he did a perfect exploitation of these religious zealots and fanatics by his understanding of human nature to that degree. And the guy is one of the smartest criminal minds in the world, and he's been able to, for how many decades, maintain his stature without ever being, I mean, even a conviction, he ends up being president of the United States. How
If
do you
we
do that? Now you got a crime lord being the president of the United States with immunity to do whatever he wants. But the fact is, I don't think he has total immunity, and he's been walking the line. I think he's put his foot over the line a few times, and if he doesn't get elected next time, he's going to go to jail. And I'm sure the next government will see his ass in jail.
I'll bet against that. But with respect to your take on religion, I think there's some great comics out there that do a great dissertation. George Carlin, amongst
Yes.
others, he's passed away. But
Yeah, he did
you
really
should
good.
get on YouTube and look up, George Carlin religion. Jeffries, he's a more recent comic from Australia. He's got some wicked comedy on the U.S. gun laws, as well as his take on religion. I find him hilarious. Some people find his humor a little too raw. On your other channel there, your comics,
Podcaster comedy, yes.
yeah,
They do a few takes on it when they're interviewing people, yes.
well, and the thing is, people need to lighten up every once in a while, and maybe go to a comic show. They're far and few between. I know where I live, I don't think there's a comedy club anymore, and I'm not sure
Well,
that.
every comic is afraid of speaking the truth now because of the woke movement. And in all honesty, it's definitely a problem for them. And I can say that because I produce comedy shows, and they're afraid. They really have to bite their tongue. And it's all in jest. It's not the way they believe. It's just try to get a laugh. And they're really a small minority of the population is telling the rest of us what we can say, do, or laugh at. And
Well, look at recently the Colbert, you know, the nightly whatever it's called show. I mean, it's going off the air. The Daily Show is going to be next. They're on the edge because their humor is cutting edge, and it's great. Great entertainment. They'll be gone soon, I bet.
They say anything bad about Trump. You see that goes to the power of Trump. He oversees a big multi-billion-dollar business deal where that channel or owners of the station were doing a merger or selling of their assets, and they had to get rid of Colbert because he would have pissed Trump off enough that Trump would have blocked the billion-dollar deal. So it was just a financial reaction, and he's their biggest bread earner and number one show. So that tells you the extent of the money in billions that they're selling the channel for, that they need Trump's approval, and get rid of him is, like, why would you get rid of your number one channel?
Bill Meyer used to, ridicule a lot of politicians, including Trump, and Trump invited him to the White House, and Bill Meyer said afterwards that how nice a person he was, and how out of character that he thought he was.
How many threats did he get?
Well, no, it was all honey and sugar, and when you look at the personality traits of a psychopath, using charm or wit to manipulate others for personal gain. Bill Meyer was in it hook, line, and sinker, and I don't know if he's been as critical afterwards, after giving that wonderful speech about how nice Trump was. Of course he was nice. You know,
Yeah.
he was manipulating you. You know, and the thing is, hopefully the manipulation, you know, the fairy dust, you know, wore off for the next show. But I haven't seen him for a while. But at least he's still on the air. I think he's gone
Well,
for the
we'll have
summer
to do our
for holiday.
next podcast on the Epstein files. I mean, that's one we definitely have to do. I think that will be our next one, as a matter of fact, for any
Isn't that what?
people watching.
Isn't that what we did?
Not really. We didn't get into
no,
it in detail, but
no, but this is the foundation. This is where it's
yes,
coming from.
yes,
You know, it's coming from a psychopath, and
yes.
people have identified him as such over and over again. And I think
Experts have identified, not
and
just
I think
us. Experts in the field that have isolated and identified and have university degrees and everything in the subject. We're just giving our personal opinion.
well, no, I'm what I'm suggesting is don't listen to us. Get
Yeah.
the list. Get the list of the the psychometric tools. Go through that list yourself and look at your own.
Write in the comments, and we'll try to
Look at your own
respond.
examples. You know, like there's so many examples out there, you don't even know where to start. But it's
Well,
something people should do for themselves. They should actually get online, download the psychometric tools for the definition of psychopath
and if you don't think it
and apply it.
affects you, if you don't think it affects you and it isn't of concern to you, what Trump is doing affects every person on the face of the earth and directly affects them. And that's one of the most important issues you should take out of this. Why we're highlighting that he's a psychopath is because what he's doing on a world scale affects you no matter where you are. Even a igloo up north is affected by what Trump's doing, and you know it's a reality that he is having a major impact on the world. And if he draws more allegiance with Putin and or does the wrong thing, I mean, you got a psychopath with the nuke button right in his fingertips. So he's not above doing anything. He has no moral compass from all indications in his dealings from when he was young to now. So when you've got a person with the nuke buttons in his hand and the ability to say, hey, pay me or else, you know, all the money ends up with me, or I could do anything.
So
nuke
us, click on the like button, leave us a comment. I got to go feed cats.
Okay.
Take
care.
They're demanding little buggers, right?
But don't
I think
be grabbing that pussy. I'm telling you right now. Okay, take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Subscribe to the channel, give us a like, and please share the video. Don't be afraid to share this commercial with your friends too. Subscribe to the channel, give us a like, and please share the video. Don't be afraid to share this commercial with your friends too.